Hey F1 fans, welcome back! Today we're diving into a curious part of Ayrton Senna's toolkit. His unusual throttle technique. You've probably heard the story. Senna would rapidly blip and release the throttle on corner exits, a rhythm that sounded almost like he was playing the pedal. On some onboard clips, you can clearly hear him chopping the throttle as he turns out of a corner. At first glance, it looks like madness. That kind of aggressive throttle work usually costs grip. Yet Senna was one of the fastest drivers ever, and this habit somehow worked for him. People close to the paddock noticed it. Test drivers at McLaren at the time even wrote about how baffling it was. I raced in F1 for 6 years, and when I joined McLaren in 1990, I couldn't understand how Senna did it. It took me days to adapt. He was faster than me by a second with the same car after 10 laps. That quote captures the confusion. How did that odd throttle flicking actually make him quicker? So what was he doing exactly? The simplest way to describe it is, instead of smoothly winding the throttle open on corner exit, Senna repeatedly and very quickly pressed and released the pedal in short bursts. The result, in the places where it mattered, was that he could get back to full throttle earlier than his rivals. On some corners that gained him a couple of tenths of a second and added up lap after lap. Why don't other drivers do it? There are a few reasons most drivers avoid this approach. First, it moves weight around the car. Modern race cars, and those of Senna's era, have suspension, and any throttle or brake input shifts the load between front and rear. When you brake, the car noses down and the front tires bite harder. When you accelerate, the nose lifts and the load shifts rearwards. Big shifts in weight upset the balance. Too much forward or rearward transfer can cause understeer or oversteer. Most drivers therefore aim for smooth inputs to keep weight transfer predictable and keep all 4 tires working. Second, rapid throttle chopping makes wheel spin more likely. If the rear tires break traction, you lose acceleration, and once the tires are slipping, you're not accelerating as fast as you otherwise could. There's a popular explanation tied to Senna's early years. He raced in the turbo era, and that drove part of the technique. Short bursts of throttle can help keep a turbo spooled and reduce turbo lag. The delay between pressing the pedal and getting full boost. In the turbo cars of the 1980s, managing the turbo's behavior through corner exits was a real performance lever. By modulating the throttle in quick pulses, you preserve exhaust flow and the turbo's rotational speed, helping you get the power back earlier. But Senna's throttle habit predates his Formula One turbo years. He developed it in karting. In karts, you sometimes blip the throttle during the braking shard turn-in phase to avoid rear locking because karts have no suspension, a solid rear axle, and much less power. But the habit teaches a very fine throttle touch. Once formed, such habits are hard to change. Driving is a complex, instinctive skill, and many reflexes formed early in a driver's career stay with them. That's why some drivers struggle to adapt their style when the car changes. We've seen that happen in modern F1 too. Senna continued using short throttle bursts even after turbos disappeared from F1. I checked his onboard footage across his whole career, and the rhythm is there in many seasons. So how did it actually work for him? My theory is this. He pushed and released the pedal so fast and so frequently that the car simply didn't have time to react with large weight shifts. In other words, the inputs were so rapid that the mass of the car couldn't transfer significantly fore or aft. So the net balance change was much smaller than you'd expect from larger, slower inputs. The result was a kind of micro-control. He gained the benefit of earlier throttle application without the usual heavyweight transfer penalties. That's incredibly hard to do, lap after lap at full speed. It needs extraordinary talent and precisely measured technique. Senna had both in abundance. Could that technique work in modern F1? Today's cars generate far more downforce and are more sensitive to ride height and aerodynamic balance. Modern cars are also designed to make the entire platform work. With strong rake effects, the difference in ride height between front and rear. If your driving suddenly varies the ride height through heavy oscillations, you move the aerodynamic center of pressure and can lose downforce in unstable ways. So in theory, a technique that makes the car pitch or squat more would be riskier now than it was 30 years ago. But the essence of Senna's method wasn't to violently upset the chassis. It was rapid, tiny blips that didn't allow large weight transfer to develop. In that sense, it's similar to modern electronic aids. For example, when a stability system or ABS lightens brake pressure automatically to prevent lockup, you see a series of micro-corrections that keep the tire working rather than letting it grab and break traction. Senna's technique was a human equivalent, a way of micromanaging traction and keeping the car on the optimal edge. Would Senna have been faster if he abandoned this habit and used a classic, smooth throttle? We'll never know for sure. What's clear is that he made the technique work for him to a degree other drivers couldn't replicate. In the modern context, where ride sensitivity and aero complexity are greater, copying it exactly could be counterproductive. But the principle of extremely fine throttle control is timeless. If you enjoyed this breakdown, check out my other videos on driving technique, like my deep dive on Michael Schumacher's style. Big thanks to everyone who liked, commented, and supported the channel on the previous video. If you like this one, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Tell me which driver's technique you want us to analyze next. Good luck to you all, and see you in the next video.